And there's only 5 people in the world that their opinion actually matters to me. It took me a long time to truly understand that and realize like the people that love you and lift you up and fill your cup up are the people that opinions should matter to you, and the rest of them are really just opinions. You train your body every single day as hard as you can, but most of you are so lazy on training your mind. I had a really, really successful bodybuilding season, but I didn't allow any of that success to give me motivation. All it did was put me in a deeper hole because I didn't actually complete the goal that I wanted to, which was winning. I took a step back. I knew I needed to improve physically, but the place I really, truly needed to improve was mentally. I've always believed passion drives success. Bodybuilding, it's my heart and soul. It's truly everything that I am, and it was always my escape. So my name is Martin Fitzwater. I'm IFBB Pro. I turned pro in 2020, but it's been a long and crazy journey before that. So started bodybuilding in 2017, started lifting weights at a really, really young age. So I started sports when I was 3. My dad put me in wrestling. Where I grew up is a tiny town in Wyoming. And I come from a really blue collar family that really believes in like hard work and sports. And so my dad put me in wrestling as just the first start off of showing you like wins and losses and being able to learn how to lose, because you're one-on-one. There's not a finger to be pointed or somebody to blame. It's just you and the other guy. So that was something that I got early on, and my dad really pushed, and we really fell in love with that, honestly. That was my favorite sport and kind of my first love, if you will. So I was completely obsessed with wrestling. I got to the point where we were wrestling year round and going to national tournaments almost every weekend, honestly. So around 8, 10, that age is when we started traveling and going to these big wrestling tournaments and started catching some losses from better wrestlers from other states and things like that. And so my dad started making me wrestle with the middle school boys, and I started to see that the high school and middle school boys were lifting weights sometimes after wrestling practice. So started begging my dad around that like 9 and 10 years old, like, can I start lifting weights? Can I start lifting weights? And because he didn't really have time to oversee me or be able to go training with me, my dad is a blue collar guy, worked in the oil field my whole life, mostly 12-hour shifts away from home, 14, 15 hours a day. And he worked away from home a lot. So he would be traveling all over the country. And my mom raised me mostly when I was little. So because of that, grew up on a cattle ranch in the middle of nowhere, and sports was kind of everything to us. So in the mix of that, like I said, I begged my dad, and he wasn't able to be there and guide me in it. So he bought me the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and he said, nobody knows how to lift weights better than Arnold. Why don't you read this, take some notes, figure some things out. And when you read it, then you can lift weights. And I do think that some of it might have been a deterrent because it was an encyclopedia and it was a book this big, and he kind of thought maybe I wouldn't want to go through a book that big, especially because I wasn't that big on school at that point in my life. But that was something I was super, super passionate about. So I went through the book. Probably took me 3 months or so. But I went through all the important lifting stuff. I highlighted what I thought was important. I chose the sections of the book that I thought weren't important, like to show my dad, like, this is about competing. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm only like you said, the lifting portion. So I brought it to him, and he was like, okay, yeah, you can start lifting some weights, go up there when the high school boys go and ask them if you can join in and make sure like they look after you and you don't get hurt and stuff. So I started doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and my dad would be home on the weekends sometimes, so we would do P90X. And so we started doing some dumbbell stuff and some stuff like that, and I really started to get strong. And then when I started getting in with the high school boys, they kind of saw some potential in me, so they started making me lift heavy with them and things like that. And really what took off for me was I saw a lot of progress really quickly, especially strength jumps. But then I started winning big matches, especially as I was going into middle school there at that like 12 and 13. I had an undefeated season in wrestling. We were going to national tournaments and I was getting All-American status and only losing to big name guys. And so it was really exciting, and it really helped like motivate and drive that love for the sport. And right about that time was when the transition from magazines in bodybuilding to guys finally starting to do some media. So around that time is when Facebook got popular and when Instagram was kind of just coming out. That's when I really started to fall in love with actual bodybuilders, not just lifting weights, and kind of starting to understand the sport more. And so around 14 is when I started eating 5-6 meals a day, watching Jay Cutler and Greene content. And then that's around that time is when YouTube was starting to pop up and guys were starting to make a little bit more content on that. And my love for bodybuilding really flourished. So probably, I think when I was 15, it might have been 16, was around the time that Generation Iron came out. And that just kind of really lit the fire to make me even more excited about bodybuilding. When I graduated high school, I was 8th in the nation in shot put. I was a top recruit in football, and I knew that I wanted to play college sports, but also still had a deep love for bodybuilding. So I'd always told my friends, like, when I'm done with college sports, eventually, like, I'll end up bodybuilding probably. I decided to do track instead of football, and that's probably what led me to bodybuilding, to be honest, because if I would have stuck with football, I think I would have done the whole football track all the way through to the end and played my 5 years with the football team and things like that. But because my love for track was mostly, track was fun, but it wasn't my love. It was just, I was really good at it. So I was 8th in the nation. I had a great scholarship, got an awesome opportunity to go to a university, have a full ride, have my school paid for. So I took it, and I loved the opportunity, and college track was fun, and I did well. But I was skipping track workouts to do bodybuilding workouts. And that's in college is when I really decided, like, I want to be a bodybuilder. Eventually I'm going to compete. And I kept telling people, like, oh, when I'm done with school. And I remember this day, like it was yesterday, that what finally made me pull the trigger on I'm going to compete was 2016. It was maybe the first week in November. Phil was just a couple weeks post Olympia, and he came and did a guest posing about an hour and a half from where I was going to college. So me and my best friend, we drove over, and the second he walked out, I said, like, to my best friend, like, yep, I don't care if I'm on the track team. I don't care what's going on. I'm going to compete because I want to look like that. So that was kind of the defining moment for me. But I decided to compete in 2017. That's when I did my first show. And I did very well my first show. Had a lot of guys come to me and tell me that I could do well in the ranks. And then I got second in the open to a guy that ended up going and getting second at USA's 2 weeks later. So I knew I was right in the ranks of being around guys that were right on the cusp of a pro card. 2018, I did 2 pro qualifiers. Ended up getting a 5th place and really botched my peak at USA's. So Steve Weinberger came to me and said, dude, North Americans, you got a couple more weeks. And then I did that. I ended up getting second out there by 1 point. And so I knew that what I needed to do was just take some time off and come back and be my best. Ended up doing that, but in the midst of it, COVID happened. So I was very privileged in that I was up in Wyoming. I had the opportunity to train in a gym that was people free. And I continued to make great progress. So in 2020 was one of my best years of bodybuilding, to be honest. And I won my pro card that year, and was able to make a big jump from quitting school and working construction to finally becoming a full-time bodybuilder in 2020 when I won my card. I'd finally made the step of enough people coaching and doing some personal training down at Armbrust Pro Gym that I was able to step away from construction and make this my full-time gig. So I've been very privileged since then to be able to continue to do so. And then 24 has been obviously my best year with a fourth place at the Olympia, a few show wins. And we're just going to hopefully continue to progress on that. So
as a kid, like, it sounds like your entire childhood was very athletic focused. I mean, it sounds like pretty much every day you were doing something. Was
yeah.
that like, was that something you like just naturally wanted to do? Or do you feel like it was ever a chore to do, to go to practice? I know like wrestling especially can just be so time consuming.
Yeah, honestly, man, like it was such ingrained into the culture of my hometown. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. It's a town of 1,500 people. We're the only town in the county, and we're the smallest county in the United States. So if that gives you any perspective on where I grew up and where I'm from, we're in the middle of nowhere. There's more cattle than there is people. And because of that, the culture in hard work and getting up and doing those things and showing up for your team and showing up for your teammates and those things is something that my hometown takes a lot of pride in. So, I never really, like you said, it definitely was second nature, but it was something that everybody did. So whether you were good, whether you were bad, you showed up, you worked your butt off. And like I said, my dad being a blue collar guy, then us also having the cattle ranch and me growing up on that, work was not something that I was ever thought was hard or difficult. It's just part of life. We woke up at 5 a.m. to feed the cows before I went to school. And when I got home, I had chores to do before I got to go to bed. So the sports was the fun part. That was the exciting part. If anything felt mundane, it was the chores that I had to do before school and after school. I always loved sports, and I just loved the camaraderie of it all. Me and my best friends all wrestled. We all went to wrestling tournaments together. We all won trophies together. And that was really exciting. And because of that, I think it never really felt like a chore or a task as much as it was a privilege for me and my buddies to go do those things. And kind of like now, I get to train with my best friend every day and live my dream. And I couldn't ask for a better opportunity. I know some of these guys, it's hard and it's tough and dieting sucks and those things. But when in the grand scheme of things, this is pretty crazy to be my job because, like I said, I was very, very good at school, and I was in pharmacy school, and I decided to just take the leap and believe in myself and chase bodybuilding without finishing school because I didn't love what I did. I was very good at the pharmacy thing. I could have graduated and been a pharmacist, but I felt like I was going to go to work every day and look at the clock and couldn't wait for it to be 5 o'clock. And so I said, I can always come back to college. I can always come back and get a degree. But you got a very short window on you can be a great bodybuilder and really like chase a dream, especially in athletics like this. So like I said, I was about 2.5 years deep in pharmacy school. I took the jump and quit. I started working in the oil field with my dad for a while. We worked 7/12s and I was away from home all the time. And I realized I don't know if this can be conducive to bodybuilding. I can make it happen and I'm making enough money that I can afford bodybuilding now. But being on the road makes me not enjoy bodybuilding as much. So I made some phone calls. I figured it out that I would go home and I would build houses and work a construction job with a friend of mine, a family friend. So from 2018 until 2020, I worked anywhere from 40 to 70 hours a week building houses and construction. And it was very tough. Honestly, it was really hard on my body. I had to eat copious amounts of food to be able to grow and combat the beating my body was taking from construction. And every day when I got off work after 10, 12 hours of work in construction, I had to go to the gym and still kick my own butt in doing that. I was very lucky and privileged that I had a boss that was understanding of me eating my meals and understanding that I was going to chase my dream as well. But it was tough, and it was it was something that, what I'm doing now is something I dreamed of in those moments where I make money from bodybuilding. I'm very privileged. I get to travel around, and my job is really shaking hands and meeting the fans and getting to do what I love every single day. So for me, it's easy to have the perspective and be able to look in on what I'm doing and be super appreciative and privileged because I had to work so hard to get to this moment. And because I appreciate hard work so much, I watched my dad work his butt off, like I said, my whole life, 712s in the oil field, coming from nothing to be able to afford and help me be able to pursue my dream. And now, now I'm starting businesses and things like that as an athlete to be able to hopefully be able to employ my family and my dad and be able to take care of him. So I'm super privileged and lucky, and I couldn't ask for a better opportunity.
When you got into bodybuilding, were you aware of the complexity of the process it takes to become financially reliant on it as a career, or were you just kind of just optimistic in the fact that it would just like happen?
I'll be honest with you, man. I am a complete dreamer, and I'm somebody that I've always just believed in myself. So when I feel it's right, I just take the leap. And sometimes it's definitely bit me in the butt. But it's something that I've lived my life by. And honestly, it's always created the best opportunities for me, because although I put myself in some moments of sink or swim, I usually figure out how to swim. And I do think that a lot of that comes from my background. Both my parents are super, super hard workers, and they just could never get out of the rut. My parents both struggle with alcoholism, and it's something that I watched my whole life from most of my family, to be honest. And if they didn't have that, they had teen pregnancy. So it was something that I wanted to create something much better for myself. And because of that, I'm a dream chaser. And I thought, like, at first it was be a pharmacist, because that can make $250,000 a year and I can support a family and I'll have a steady job and I can retire. But as I started to chase that dream, I realized, like, I don't have a passion for this. So I've always believed passion drives success. And when I didn't have passion for it anymore, I realized I probably wasn't going to be successful for it. Whereas bodybuilding, it's my heart and soul. It's truly everything that I am. And it's something that I've fallen in love with from the time I was 12 or 13 to now. It's only progressed and grown, not only for the physical gains that I've gotten from it, but truly from the mental and aspect as well of just, it was always my escape. When things were bad or kids were getting in trouble at home, it was a way for me to stay out of trouble, because, to be honest, I have the same addictive behaviors as my parents. And I knew that if I didn't find my niche and my thing that I really was passionate about and chased it, that I would probably fall into that addictive behavior, whether it be drinking, whether it be drugs, you name it, who knows what it could have been. But my addiction is honestly bodybuilding, and it's probably the best thing I could have ever done. It's probably saved me from either dead or in jail, to be honest. And I've watched my parents struggle with those behaviors my whole life, and knew, like, okay, if I can get that under control and I can figure out how to guide it and use it, it can be super powerful. Because I watched my dad come in and out of moments where he would use that drive and that addictive behavior to, like, I want to make $300,000 this year. And all of a sudden, like, he'd make it happen. So I saw that they had that in them, but they would always fall back into the coping mechanisms that they would use. And I just, over time, I've used bodybuilding for that coping mechanism. And at times it probably wasn't healthy. I've gotten to the point where I locked myself in a box and I didn't want to do anything besides bodybuilding. And I became very unhappy. And that was honestly what led me into moving to Texas and being with Branch. And honestly, what led me into taking a full year off into 23 was because I was so addicted to this sport and so caught up in what every media channel was saying and everything that was going on in bodybuilding. And I wanted to be Mr. Olympia tomorrow, and I wasn't enjoying the journey or focused on the journey because I was letting it become an addiction versus a healthy habit that I love and enjoy and it be my passion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the words escape, I think a lot of us can relate to that because the lifestyle, if you really allow it to, it can be quite consuming. And it's such an amazing outlet to channel energy. But at the same time, I think we talked about this earlier, where if you only have bodybuilding, it becomes a dark place, just like anything, with that lack of balance. What do you feel like gave you balance after that? Did the 2023 year off? What did you do that gave you?
Yeah, man. So this is something I've preached to every young man that I possibly can at this point, especially if you want to chase this sport at the highest, is you train your body every single day as hard as you can. But most of you are so lazy on training your mind. So I was one of you, and I kind of really felt disappointed in myself, honestly, after 22, because I had a really, really successful bodybuilding season, but I didn't allow any of that success to give me motivation. All it did was put me in a deeper hole because I didn't actually complete the goal that I wanted to, which was winning. And I was just completely obsessed with winning. So I took a step back. I knew I needed to improve physically, but the place I really, truly needed to improve was mentally. So in that year off, I also did some therapy. I did quite a few sessions, to be honest, and helped me deal with some trauma and stuff from a young age that I'd never dealt with before and learned how to cope with. So I used that oftentimes. Bodybuilding was my coping mechanism, and I leaned on it too much. And something that I was also not doing was just communicating well. I wasn't letting anyone know how I felt or that I was down in those moments and things like that. So I needed to work on myself, and that was something that I took very, very seriously in 23. It was, yes, a growing year, and I'd made a lot of progress in my physique. I probably put on 5 to 6 pounds of muscle in that time, and also grew a lot muscle maturity wise. But truly what made me able to win shows in 24 was getting my mind right, getting my perspective right, being able to appreciate what I do. Because at the end of the day, if it does feel like a job and it does feel like a task, there's so much stress that goes with that and a lot of pressure that goes with that. And yes, pressure builds diamonds, but sometimes it builds explosions. And that's where I was. I knew that if I didn't take that time and fix what was going on, I was going to completely implode myself to be one of these guys that said, what if, or he would have made it if he wouldn't have just quit. But I was at a point at the end of 22, before I decided to take that moment, that I was ready to be done with bodybuilding. I called Brett after the Arnold UK. I said, hey man, I'm going to go back to construction. I hope you understand. We're probably not going to train together and stuff anymore. I think I'm done with this bodybuilding thing. And he was like, you're stupid. Call me tomorrow. Go train. You're not done. And so I had some really good people in my corner that believed in me. Like I said, Brett, Branch, a few others that really loved me and said, man, you're so gifted at this. If you quit, you're stupid. You belong here, and this is what you need to do. And Brett's one of those people that really, really, really made me believe I do have what it takes. I'm just not there yet. So I took that time off, and in that time, like I said, I flourished. I knew that I needed to make those changes and make those improvements mentally. And in doing so, I realized how much fun I was having and how much I did love bodybuilding. And I think because that perspective changed, it was able to make me enjoy bodybuilding so much more that I knew this is it. I found what works for me to be able to make this my forever job.
Do you feel like, and I'm sure it was hard too at the time, but the thought of taking time off, I mean, first off, you became pro fairly young, and you rose through the ranks fairly quickly as well. But at the same time, the sport, like you said earlier, it requires a combination of size, conditioning, and muscle maturity. And that muscle takes time to mature. So do you feel like before, like do you regret taking time off so late, or do you feel like it was the right time? Like what if do you ever think about like what if I took 2022 off or 2021 off?
Yeah, obviously hindsight is a beautiful thing and a pain in your butt, right? So in moments, there is things that I wish I maybe would have done differently. Like I do think that I probably should have took a full year off after I won my pro card. I had just moved. I had just made a transition from a very hard laborious job into bodybuilding. I had so many things going on, but my only goal was bodybuilding. So I don't, in hindsight, like I said, yes, maybe. But you couldn't have told that 23, 24-year-old, 25-year-old Martin anything, and he wasn't going to listen to you. It didn't matter. Like I was completely dead set in who I was and what I was going to be and the dream I was chasing. And I believed that I would catch it. I was a little bit naive in the sense of how young I really was in the sport, to be honest with you. Like I won my pro card at 23. I'm one of the youngest guys ever in the open. And I thought like at 24 or 25, I could be beating guys like Ian Valier, who got 15 years of training on me, 10 more pounds of muscle on me, and also time on stage on me that I was, when I did my pro debut, I'm obviously super nervous in those things, getting on a pro stage. So I was a little bit naive to that, but I think a few of those kicks in the teeth, honestly, were the things I needed, because I think if I would have had success right out of the gate, I think it would have bit me in the ass, to be honest. I think my ego would have inflated even more than it had, which it was already a little too big, to be honest, in those younger years. And if I would have had that success, like Tony said, I don't think I would have been dead, but I do think that I would have had some major downfalls or some big issues, because one, you get a lot more fame as you have success and a lot more eyes on you. And because of that, like I said, I would have inflated my ego. So I needed a few of those losses, one, to just make me a better bodybuilder, but two, then to make me realize like I had some work to do as a man. So no, I don't want to go back and change anything or tell that boy anything, because I think he needed those things. And as much as we want to say like, oh, if I would have done this, it maybe could have eliminated me from having all those hardships. No, it probably would have brought different or more hardships in a different way. So I think it was good for me. And I think, like I said, it gave me perspective to know like, I am so privileged. What are you talking about? I have never been out of a first call out in a show ever in my life. I've never been out of the top 5. I'm 28 years old at the top of bodybuilding when most guys have 10 years on me. And I'm doing what I love, training with my best friend every day. When, I don't know, I just think if I would have had success, I would have had a little bit more money, a little bit more ego, and I don't think it would have gone as well. So I'm happy that I can't go back. If anything, I would just want to go back and tell him like, enjoy the journey a little bit more, man, because you're not soaking in some of these really cool moments that like you're going to look back on and like, remember like that loss made me a way better bodybuilder, instead of being like that, F this and F that, and I got screwed and this and that. Just needed a perspective change.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So going into the reality of the sport, what are some of the challenges that you face that you may have not expected being a professional bodybuilder?
Yeah, so there's a few things, right? Like one is obviously, we all know we're on hormones and things like that. And I think getting into it really, really young, a lot of guys are super naive to like mean, you're changing your brain chemistry. You're changing everything about yourself. So you're playing with your hormones and you're playing God a little bit. So just remember that. I was a little bit naive to that, in that I do think if you abuse drugs and things like that, it can change your personality a little bit. I was lucky enough that I kind of started to see those things and started to pull back. But it was something that I was not really aware of, that it could be dangerous like that, as well as, obviously we know drugs are dangerous and things like that, but you don't know how powerful they are. You don't know where to get them, those things like that. So getting into this sport, that part was very eye-opening to me, having to deal with Western Union and things like that. So I was a little bit naive, if you will, to that side of things. And then just the whole world itself is so niche. There's a lot of weird and crazy things that go on in this. And with that, there comes some other negative things in bodybuilding that I wasn't really aware of, like on social media and things like that, of one, people being overly sexual to you when that's not what your goal for this was, but it comes with that because you're posting your whole body. And I was a little bit naive to that as well, if you will. And then I would say the last thing that I was a little bit naive to is how hate or comments or negativity in general online can actually affect you as a person. Before I had it, I was always like, oh, that's so easy to just ignore and turn off, or like, don't read the comments. But when you're in it, man, it's hard to stay away from it. And it's hard not to see those negative things. It's hard not to see what people say about you. And it's something that I've learned to deal with very well. And that's why we continue to post the things that I post on social media and enjoy to post on social media, is because we've started to find a culture and a group of people that support me and mostly fill my cup up with positivity. But with social media comes a lot of negativity, and you kind of have to learn how to navigate that. And there was definitely no blueprint for me on that. I came into this and got so much advice from Jay and Branch on how to treat fans and how to diet and how to train. But they really didn't know how to navigate the waters of hate online and how to stay away from comments and those things. Jay kind of got it at the tail end of his career, but he was so loved and such a great ambassador that it's really hard for people to be negative to Jay. And besides that, most of these guys, besides Phil and Dexter and them, in the older era, didn't have social media to have to deal with as much. Magazines, they really weren't going to write a bad article about you. They wanted to highlight what was good about you and what you did as a bodybuilder that was great, not the bad thing. So now with these social media channels, you have to know, one, all eyes are on you. You're a professional athlete and people are watching you 24/7. And as a younger bodybuilder, I made mistakes or talked shit online or, talked badly about people when people were recording. And I had to eat the bullet on that and take the hate and take the damage that it did to my social media or getting dropped by sponsors and things like that. And that really wasn't something I was prepared for, to be honest with you. And it probably just came mostly with also the stardom. I was very young. I got fame early. People started following my Instagram very early on. And so even in my amateur career, when I would miss or not peak well, I get a lot of hate. And that really was hard on me at first. It really took me a long time to figure out how to navigate that and understand that, like, yeah, they're making these comments, but they might not know what they're talking about. And the people that know, they know. If Branch Warren and Jay and these guys are telling you you're a good bodybuilder, then like, you're probably okay. But it definitely took me a while to navigate that. And so I'd say that part was probably the hardest for me. The actual steroid side of things, I had a decent grasp on because of pharmacy school. So I kind of knew some of the things I was getting into with that, on like what I was supposed to control, what I needed to look for in my blood work, that I needed to get blood work and pay attention to my health, because these things do change markers and can cause issues. I wasn't quite, I truly had no idea on the doses bodybuilders took, and I never really tried to look into that as a younger kid because I didn't care. I planned on doing sports for a long time, and so steroids really weren't an interest to me until I was actually fairly into the sport and ready to get on stage. And with that, I had a decent group of people around me that could guide me and kind of had a decent knowledge. I would say my first coach was a little bit aggressive because he'd mostly worked with people that weren't gifted yet. So when he got me, he found very quickly that like we didn't have to be as aggressive and we were getting the same response as other athletes. And I think that that was also really beneficial for me in that I kind of knew like, okay, I don't have to take what he takes to get the same response. So like maybe I can do this and do it healthily and take care of myself. And then as I've progressed, I've watched myself do some things that I even thought were stupid and had blood work come back good. So that was something that also I wasn't quite sure on getting into this sport or quite knew what I was getting into. But I probably had a little bit better perspective than some of these guys even, to be honest.
Going back to the online, the criticism, the reviews of just the reality of putting yourself out there. When you did make some comments back that they were just reactive, but at the same time, it's like the fans there's a lot of great fans out there, but they're also ruthless. And the critiques, the thing with bodybuilding is it's your body. You can't like leave your body for a day and take a break. If you're a baseball player, I know it's still connected to you, but you can you can go away from it. Do you feel like how do you handle some of these comments are so absurd for months of work, your life at work?
Yeah, man. Honestly, it was very hard. It took me a very long time to be able to process it. And I'm somebody that, I'll be honest, man, it still bothers me and I still struggle with it. Even as a pro, you know, that I compete today. I missed like crazy at Pittsburgh. My peak just wasn't what I wanted to be. I'm still 3% body fat. I still have glute striations. I still look crazy. My quads are striated top to bottom, but it wasn't what I wanted to bring to stage. And some people made that very clear online. To be honest, now, unknowing people don't bother me as much as some of the criticisms from the veterans in the sport. That part bothers me a little bit because, one, I think some of these veterans are a little harsh on bodybuilding in general, and they're not actual fans anymore. They're almost haters of the sport.
Gatekeepers?
Yeah, that's a good word for it. Gatekeepers is a good word for it.
Everyone thinks their arrow is better.
Exactly. And that's fine. And that's perfectly great. And I understand some of the jealousy. We're making more money than bodybuilders have ever made right now. Competitions are worth more. Contracts are getting to be awesome. YouTube and social media is very profitable. So I get it. I understand. But some of these guys, us bodybuilders that grew up loving bodybuilding and are big fans of bodybuilding, some of these guys hold a place in my heart because I was a big fan of them. So then when they rip on you, even when you're just off this much, it does hurt sometimes, you know? And the way I found to navigate it is like, I have a crazy circle. And there's only 5 people in the world that their opinion actually matters to me. And that's hard to get down to. It took me a long time to truly understand that and realize like the people that love you and lift you up and fill your cup up are the people that opinions should matter to you, and the rest of them are really just opinions. And because of that, I've been very successful in the last year of being able to navigate and get away from that, as well as my other secret weapon or superpower is I have my cameraman, Jake. He runs my social media. He runs my YouTube. He filters my comments to make sure sometimes I don't see the stupid stuff people say. And he gives me an opportunity in those last couple weeks of show prep when you are so drained and so emotionally attached to what you're doing. he makes it so that I don't even have to get on social media unless I want to, unless I desire to. And I feel like that has taken a lot of pressure off as well, or at least made it hold less weight to me because I don't have to look at it. I'm not on there posting and trying to promote myself because he's doing that for me. But it's there. I'm still having a presence online because you also can't be a hermit in this sport if you want to make money. As great as it is to be able to shut away and not use social media or not have social media in those moments, that's the moments that fans want to see most. They want to see you 2 weeks out from a show. They want to see you posing in those moments. They want to see what you're eating in those moments. So as hard as it is, you still have to do that content and get it out there. And you post a check-in 4 days out from a show and you're flat and people want to say you look fat and you're not ready and this and that. You just have to know going into it that that's kind of what comes with social media. So because I know that, I have handed those reins to Jake and been able to step away and say, yeah, post that video today, but I'm not going to look at social today because I know like there will be some negativity. I don't need to hear it today.
What do you feel like? Can I go into like what a daily life is like for you during a prep? Because I think it's an interesting perspective to have for someone who's able to do full-time bodybuilding, because you're not just working out and eating. There's also a content and a endorsement like side of things that people may not understand.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, obviously I'm super privileged in that I get to be a pro bodybuilder and this is my full-time job. But there is a lot that comes with it, like you said. So I have contractual agreements with Hosstile in which I have YouTube requirements, I have social media requirements from them, as well as there's a certain amount value that I should or should be meeting at a rate that I'm at in my popularity, in which I have no issue doing because I post on social media and do what I do on social media, that I have a good presence. But with that also, you know, my full day is, you saw this morning, a vast part of my day is cooking and getting those things ready. Obviously training is 3 to 4 hours of my day between traveling to the gym, getting back home and those things. But then I'm somebody that outside of bodybuilding, I don't just want bodybuilding to be my only revenue stream. So a lot of these guys, you know, some of them personal train and things like that, or coach and stay within bodybuilding. And I think that's great. But I'm somebody, I love coaching and I think it's really rewarding to help your friends. But as I've gotten to be a more successful bodybuilder, I've found it's very time consuming and it's also very mind consuming, if you will, because I end up caring about these athletes and wanting to give them the time and effort that they need. And that takes away from what I need to do as a bodybuilder. So I've stepped away from that side of things and really tried to push into the entrepreneurial side of things. So I've started my own company with nose strips. We're working on a few other things behind the scenes. And then I would also like to start a gym. So in behind the scenes and every day right now is the process of doing that. I've set myself up the past couple of years of saving money from my contracts that I've been doing and everything like that to be able to have some revenue saved up to be able to start investing in myself. So I think one thing a few guys have done and been very successful at is believing in themselves and endorsing themselves, kind of, if you will, and starting things. And Fouad is one of them. And Fouad with Hosstile has given me a lot of motivation as an athlete myself to create a business to help support my dreams and hopefully help support others' dreams too. So I'm not somebody that I care to be a millionaire. My millionaire is winning Mr. Olympia. That's my goal in life. And that's the one thing I really, really want to do. Besides that, my main goal is being an awesome dad because I can't wait to be a dad. But I truly want to create businesses and opportunities to be able to let my family and my friends work for me, and them all have beautiful lives that they can live their dreams and travel and do things with their family that they want to do. And because of that, I have a lot of motivation and drive. So the nose strips have been very successful, and getting a little taste of success in the entrepreneurial life has just made me more hungry for more. And then outside of that, I'm a little bit different than other bodybuilders. I try to travel and get out there as much as I can. One thing I took away from Jay and Branch, who are some of the most famous guys, is shake every hand you can. Make sure everybody gets a moment and feels important, because that person is going to go home and they're going to tell their friends, and those people are going to come meet you, and they might buy a t-shirt and support you in some way, shape, or form. So that's been the past couple years for me. Whenever I have an opportunity to do a guest posing or a guest appearance or travel, as long as I'm not 3-4 weeks out from a show, I'm going to go and try to make that opportunity happen. So I do a lot of traveling this last year. The year before, in 24, I tried to do multiple shows as well as many guest appearances as I can. I think I ended up flying like 25 or 26 times last year. Went over to Europe and had some opportunities over there. And then this year is kind of the same thing. I've even had more guest appearances, obviously, because of some newfound fame. And then trying to expand and do things like booths and things like that at shows to sell my product now. So that's kind of the main goal. And then last thing I'm doing right now is I'm dipping my toes into helping promote. So I want to get eventually maybe have a show down the line when I'm done with bodybuilding to still be able to give back and be a part of the sport without competing. And then I also want to get involved back home. So I don't know if I'll get involved in the NPC in Wyoming or if I'll get involved in Nebraska, but I've spoke with both promoters, and it's something that I feel in my heart is something that I want to do just to give back to the community that was so good to me. There was no bodybuilding shows really in Wyoming when I grew up. So I never really had an opportunity to compete in Wyoming, and I did my shows in Colorado. And so I would love to be able to give back to my home state if I had that opportunity, or Nebraska, which is right next door in another small town, country boy filled community that I love the Midwest. And if I could give back to them, that'd be a perfect opportunity for me, as well as Brett's a Midwest Iowa boy. So if we could get involved in it together, then we would obviously do that as well. So that's kind of outside of bodybuilding, the few things we have going, as well as my day in the life and the busy things that I do. So yes, it's luxurious, if you will, in the sense of I'm not working a full-time job anymore. I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm kind of my own boss. But in that, if you know and you're an entrepreneur yourself, or you own your own business, that means the work is never really done. You don't get to be off, or you don't have a start and finish point when you can turn the work off and go away. It's kind of answering emails, making phone calls. Right now I have t-shirts in the works. So today when I got done filming with Dan, I'm on a FaceTime for 2 hours, getting all those things lined up and getting those bills paid and people paid so we can get the shipping and get things here on time, and then setting up drops on my website and things like that. So it is a busy job, but it's very privileging, and it's also an opportunity where I get to promote myself and do what I love. So I'm very privileged.